Hello leaders, Michael here, and we are doing a special live Q&A on managing office politics and managing up. Now, this is a unique Q&A because these are questions from the Growth Leaders Collective, and we're also recording this for a podcast episode. So every Friday, if you're listening to the podcast, every Friday I'm going to release a Q&A, questions and answers episode of actual questions posed by leaders in the Growth Leaders Collective. So if you have questions for me, you can join the GLC and send your questions in to get answered by me live. Now, today what we're going to talk about is handling office politics and managing up. So if you're in a corporate environment, I'm sure you've had to do this before and have to do this currently. And even if you are an entrepreneur, you own the business or you're the CEO, this is important for you as well because it's really about relating and communicating, being influential, and getting what you want and need for you and your team and everybody's ultimate success. Now, just like everything else, office politics, relationships are psychology and neuroscience. So the more we know about ourselves and the more we know about other people, the more effective we can be with everybody else. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Welcome to Leadership Mindset 2.0. Practical neuroscience and psychology to transform you from a tactical doer into a strategic leader. Here is your host, former social entrepreneur of the year and coach to some of the world's top executives, R. Michael Anderson.
When it comes to managing up, and just to make sure everybody understands this, managing up is when you are at a position in the organization and then there's somebody above you, maybe that you report to. Maybe it's a board of director, and maybe it's not just one person, maybe it's the level above you or even the level above that, 2 steps above. And you running your team, getting things done, need to lobby for things. Maybe it's more budget. Maybe you need people to make a decision. You need to get people on your side. And what can happen is people get stuck because they don't know how to relate to people above them. It's actually relatively simple. So before I go into the Q&A, I'm just going to give you a couple principles when you are trying to influence anybody. And although we're going to talk about managing up, this could be people on the same level as you. This could be people, below you. This could be people and customers, etc. This sounds a little bit harsh. When you're trying to get something from somebody else, when you're trying to persuade somebody, when you're trying to influence somebody, oftentimes what we do is when we go to them, we talk about what we want and how it affects us. That's your problem. When you approach somebody else, you need to frame it on why it's important to them. We're going to step back here, and if there's somebody important in your work life that's not directly in your team, you should know a couple different things about them. What is important to them? Now, this might mean you need to know their role in their department. So if it's a CFOs are normally interested in cash flow, in raising money, making sure the banking relationships are okay, but also reporting, compliance, etc. But your specific CFO, you should really know what they're, for example, evaluated on. When they have a meeting with their CEO once a year, once every quarter, what does the CEO say? Hey, did you do this or did you not do this? Sometimes you can have that information, sometimes you can't. You should really know what the priorities and initiatives of the finance department are. But then you should also know with this CFO, what is their personality? What do they like? What do they not like? Who are their friends and allies? Who are the people that they don't really get along with? This is important information for you so that you can package your requests, your communication in things that's important to them. And just remember, people, the higher you are in the organization, the less time you have, the less detail you have. Normally people are really used to getting to the point. So when you go to approach somebody, and this is good for anybody, you always have to frame it in what's in it for them. Now, for example, if I want to add another headcount and I'm talking to my boss, instead of me going to my boss and say, oh my gosh, I'm overworked, my team's overworked, we need another headcount because, we're just really, really tired. What your boss is going to hear is, hey, I need another $100,000 a year, whatever it is, for this headcount. And I don't even know why. I don't even know the return. I don't even know the risk. Alternatively, if you're strategic, and this is about you becoming more strategic, what you're going to do is you're going to go think about that, my boss, and hey, my boss really needs to increase sales by 20%, for example. What I would want to do is go to my boss and say, hey, boss, with the workload we have, we can't spend extra time doing these two initiatives that are going to get our whole department to increasing sales by 20%. So I want to add a person. What this extra person is going to do is they're going to do X, Y, and Z, which is directly going to relate to us increasing sales by 20%. Can I get another head count? Now you see, your boss is going to go, oh my gosh, I want to reach this 20%. Michael's telling me how I can do that. This is what he needs for me to get to my goal. And boom, you have so much more chance of getting that accepted. That's what I mean by framing it in something that's important to them. Framing. I'll talk about this all the time, and you can get better and better and better at it. It makes your life so much easier by framing conversations like this. So that's a little bit about managing up, playing politics. Now let's look at some specific questions that people have sent in. Question 1, I'm a people-oriented extrovert, but my CEO is a data-driven introvert. How do I manage up and get buy-in for my ideas when we speak completely different languages? Now, if you've been through the book and you know the different leadership styles, I have 4 different leadership styles, and these are somewhat related to DISC. So you, the person answering this question, is what I call a visionary influencer, or what you would call an I in DISC. So they love relationships, they love stories, they love chatting. Well, the CEO is probably a logical creator, so that's very analytical, DIS. I think that's a C in DISC. So they're driven by data, logic, and accuracy. Or they might be a bit of a dominant commander, D, where they're really driven by results and bottom lines. Now you, the person the leader asking this question, really likes to tell stories, likes to develop the relationship. Your CEO doesn't care anything about that. They want data and they want bottom line. So you're probably going into their office and just starting with some chit chat. How are you doing? How's your weekend look? They're like, just what do you want? So you need to adopt your communication to their communication style. So you don't want to tell long stories. You don't want to focus on the vision. What they want to know is they need facts, risks, ROI to make a safe decision. I'm this type of person. I'm a logical creator and dominant commander. And so for me, when anybody would come into my office, I'd be so busy. I want to get through my task list. All I wanted to know was why they're in the office. How can I solve their problem? So if this is the type of personality this person is, you need to use what's called the BLUF method. I don't even know who come up with this. This is bottom line up front. Hey, how you doing? I'm good. What are you in here for? Well, here's what it is. Here's the deal. And so you just want to be very concise. If you can, ask them a yes/no question, or just lay it out on the table. If they want more information, they're going to ask. But you just want to give the data, the description, everything else. Don't ramble. You can give any qualifiers necessary and just lay it out on the table. They're not into emotion. They're not into what they will like or they will love. This is just a very data-driven. So get down to the facts and do this. Often, visionary influencers struggle with logical creators because they're too opposite. Visionary influencers, again, want to tell stories, want to focus on the relationship, want to go for a 2-hour lunch. Logical creators just want to get to the facts and the data, but they need each other because visionary influencers hate detail and logical creators need somebody that's going to handle the relationships and the high-level stuff. So you're actually great for each other. You just really need to both appreciate that. And because it's your CEO, you always need to adopt to them for things like this because you understand this stuff better. Question 2, how do I lead effectively when I have maximum accountability but little autonomy, especially when dealing with a narcissistic or gaslighting leader? What this means is you have a lot of pressure on you, but you're getting different messages from people around you. Maybe you don't have a lot of freedom and flexibility. And you really don't want to get into the victim road, especially dealing with a potentially bully, narcissistic boss. And so you really need to, and this is difficult. I'm not saying this isn't difficult, but you need to take responsibility for what you can do and what you control and what you can't. This is, a lot of people have bosses that are difficult, some are all of the time. First thing is you have to separate what they're telling you and not take it personally. Because if people are narcissistic or they're gaslighting, they're very insecure. And you probably care a lot, but you're not able to do your job, and they are making it more difficult on you. And people that are like this will lash out at you and try to make things personal and try to tear you down. Now, this is a great place for you to work on your calmness and work on your inner power and set calm boundaries, but also play their game a little bit. I mean, you pick your battles. What you want to do is really empower your team to handle what they can, and you manage this, you being the strategic buffer, but also be careful. Don't have this lead to burnout, and don't make yourself a martyr. Don't take all the crap for your team, basically. And look, if you're in a toxic environment, you need to understand you have choices. You can either choose to stay and cope or choose to leave. And acknowledging that you are choosing to stay for now just restores your sense of control. You may say, hey, look, I'm going to stay, because remember, it's always your choice to potentially leave a toxic organization. And what you want to do is you want to practice setting calm boundaries with people. Some people need to get better at setting boundaries. And if you have somebody like this in your life, what you can do is you can do a little preparation. Because people that are insecure, narcissistic, or gaslight, when you push back and set boundaries, they do it to you less. And what a boundary might be like, well, I can do this and this, but I can't do that. No, you need to do this. I'm sorry, I can't. And what you can do, this is really, really helpful, is you can actually practice these type of responses with yourself. I don't do them in the mirror. That freaks me out too much. I don't want to watch myself do this. But I will, if I have a difficult person I'm dealing with, I will write down a couple of the things they might throw at me. And then I might write down how I would respond, and I would practice. I can do it mentally, visualize myself mentally. Some people say it out loud, because when you do that, and when you say it out loud, it's like you're wiring something so that it's easier to go into when the time actually comes. If you spend 5 or 10 minutes of that prepping yourself for a meeting, you can be a lot more ready and prepared when it comes up. I had a guy in one of my masterminds who dealt with a business owner. This guy was running the company, but he had a business owner who acted like a real tornado. The business owner turned everything over to the business leader. Let's call the business leader M. And the owner would come in and just every week or two, just come in and just disrupt everything. So the CEO, the managing director, M, he felt he was trapped and exhausted. And when we dug into this, the owner had a lot of personal life issues. And normally when people are like this, they have stuff going on at home. It could be substance abuse. It could be, a gambling problem. It could be a problem with a spouse or kids, or just any number of things. They could be just off balance. And we really worked on M's setting boundaries, writing a professional letter to the owner, talking through that, and talking about what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, and standing in his power. And anytime you do that, that is a risk. I'm not going to lie to you, that is a risk, but you need to do that to stand up for yourself. And there is a way that could, you could get fired. That doesn't happen often, but I just want to let you know that, but when you take a risk, there is a negative. But the positive is you need to stand up for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it. And normally when you do this, and you do it with a calm energy, you don't make them wrong, you don't make them personal, you do this with calm energy, then they really respond well. And that happened to this owner. He stopped butting in. M was like, look, I got all this good stuff going on. You come in, you create chaos, you create fear, everybody gets out of it. I got this. Things have been going well. I don't need you to come in and do this. This screws stuff up. If you want me to stay head of this company, you have to stop that. And then they came into an agreement about that. We're going to talk more about that in a second. Next question. What should I do when my subordinates bypass me and go straight to my boss, or when my peers are jealous, actively sabotaging my progress? First thing, this is a good thing. It happens a lot. Bypassing often happens because of expectations rather than agreements. You need to establish clear protocols with your team. So for example, I had somebody, let's name him C, in one of my group coachings. He had somebody who always went around him to his boss, and then his boss would bring that information down. And so what C was, he was being too compassionate, and he wasn't standing up for himself. So he was actually enabling the behavior. If this is happening to you, you have to draw a line in the sand and be very clear and explain to them why this is a problem. What happened is this leader C established a new rule. He would never accept status updates from indirect reports. Everything had to throw through his leaders. And once you do that, you need to have a one-on-one with everybody involved. And you have to say, look, this is how things have to happen. Do you understand this? Do you agree with this? And you want to move from expectation to agreement. So you have to get people that are really going to commit to doing things like that. And make sure you have a clear agreement. So when they don't do this, because they may slip up, they may forget, they may go to the old way, you need to say, hey, look, we agreed and you're going outside of the agreement. And again, not to make them wrong or bad, just to make them get, because it may take them a couple times to do this. You need to hold people accountable to this. And then once you do that, you can really get people back on there. And when you're having these one-on-one conversations, you need to explain why this is important. Oh, this is important because if this happens and I don't know about it, it doesn't go through this channel, then it creates chaos and it creates confusion. And I need to update the support documentation and we need to have this and we need to have this. So when you don't do this, this is the result of it. And I need to do this to do my job. So this is how it needs to happen. And you normally start with the top person at the highest level, get their buy-in. And then when you have, when you talk to everybody else, it's like, this is what I talked about with the boss. This is what we need to do. So it really goes from there. Really good questions here. Next question. How do you navigate organizational politics in a highly politicized environment without losing your integrity or sanity? Somebody told me one time, anytime you have more than 2 people, so 3 or more people, you have politics. Politics isn't necessarily bad. We just sort of hear of them or we get stuck in them when we perceive them negative. Politics is just basically relationships. I get leaders saying, "Oh, I'll never engage in politics." Then just start a one-person business if you never want to engage in politics. Be like a programmer, never talk to anybody. Politics are normal, and instead of resisting politics, you need to play politics. When I talk to people that, for example, just make it onto a board of directors, first thing I tell them is they need to go out and have coffee with every single person on that board of directors. They need to start creating that relationship. They need to understand what drives that person, what's important to that person, and you want them to like you and respect you. And you do that through having personal communication. So if there's people in your organization who you don't get along with, who you don't understand, you don't know, get them on your side. Figure out how to do that. It's simply human dynamics and psychology. So you need to map out your key stakeholders, map out the drivers. We'll probably go into this in another podcast episode. We can really go into this. I have what's called a strategic relationship map in the book, and it's really, really powerful. And like we've talked about a couple times in this session, anytime you talk to people, use the pre-framing technique of what's important to them. Anytime you have a conversation with anybody like this, you should, in the back of your mind, understand what's important to them. What are their core drivers? That, if you want to be more strategic and be a more strategic player, that is really what you got to work on. And remember, you can do politics by staying in your authentic self. Bad politics, or politics becomes toxic when people are in their ego and people are in protection mode. When you stay in your authentic self and can bring authentic self to potentially contentious situations, you become the adult in the room. You earn a lot of respect. You bring people together. And then people want to work with you, want them on your team, etc. And really, this is for another session too, release judgments. People might be political or manipulative, and that's okay. Remember, you can't control other people. You can only control yourself. You don't know what's going on. And often there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, whether it's in their personal life or maybe there's an acquisitions going on you don't know about. So just remember, there's a lot that you don't know about. But when you enter things with your authentic self and release all that other stuff, that is really powerful. Okay, leaders, hopefully I've given you some really, really good tools to really become more of a strategic player, to help get people in all areas of your organization more on your side. And just remember, you really wanted to show up as yourself. I talk about how when I became a leader, I got to know, like, and trust myself. You have most likely made it to your leadership position because you're really, really good at stuff. And people like you and they trust you. So lean into that. Have confidence in it. Have confidence in yourself. And realize that you bring so much to the table. And because of that, dear leader, I know whatever happens today, this week, this month, you got this. That's it for today's episode. Remember, information without application is just entertainment. If you want to apply these neuroscience principles live with me in a group of high-level peers, come join us inside the Growth Leaders Collective. You can get a 14-day trial for just $1 at rmichaelanderson.com/GLC. And if you have any comments or questions about today's episode, just search for the Leadership Mindset 2.0 groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'll see you there.